Awesome. Before I commence, someone asked about who a geographer is. And I must admit, just now, when I created the presentation about the different opportunities and careers in the field of disaster risk management and climate change, I did not include a geographer. And it's strange, but one main reason I didn't is because as a geographer, it's so multidisciplinary. You look at so many different areas, but generally, geography deals with how people interact with their environment. All right. So, who lives where, why they live there, and what are some of the impact that can have on living somewhere. And this is what I mean. Say, for example, someone lives close to the coast, right? And there is a tropical storm or hurricane. What happens is that, if that person lives along the coast and that area is susceptible to flooding, then that person, could lose their lives or lose resources, their livelihoods, if they're a fisher folk, then they could lose their boat, they could lose their house. So that is what geography really does, in that it looks at the interaction between where people live and why they live there, and the factors that may influence people to live in a particular area. In addition to that,
Sir,
yeah, man, go ahead.
when you say about like they lose their resources, like something like health share, when since the beach was eroding, water started to build up, and then about some fishermen huts, like I'm not sure, fish places got flooded in water.
That is a perfect example. That is a perfect example. And there are several others. In other fishing communities, you have, people might lose their houses as well. You know, in the Harbor View region, we would have seen this, um, where a lot of persons would have had to relocate because the waves came crashing into their houses, and the physical environment itself had a negative impact on the houses there. So that's a perfect example that you mentioned a while ago. The beach would be, an example of a physical natural resource that is being lost as a result of changes that are taking place within the Earth's system. And similarly, the other resources that they would lose could include their shops and huts, as you mentioned. Okay, so that's a perfect example. So let's talk a little about disaster risk management and climate change. You know, what are they? And why are they important to us? Especially since we are in a time of change, we need to ensure that the jobs that we seek after will also be relevant 10 years, 20 years from now. This will be a brief outline um, of how the presentation is structured. The first we'll look at defining disaster risk management, then we'll look at climate change, and finally, we'll be looking at the opportunities and careers that uh, are offered by climate change area, as well as disaster risk. Now, disasters occur when a region or a set of people in a particular area cannot, you know, in a sense, it exceeds their capacity to deal with the matter. So think about someone who are, you know, a group of people who are in, um, say, Legany, Jamaica, right? And as a result of, say, an earthquake or a tropical storm, these persons lose lives and their livelihoods, and they, in essence, will need help from an external party. Uh, can does anyone remember um, a natural event that took place in St. Vincent recently? Anyone?
A volcanic eruption.
Very good. So a volcanic eruption took place. The La Soufrière volcano, and as such, St. Vincent needed help from other governments, you know, such as Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, as well as international organizations, including, you know, the United Nations. So that was a disaster because they needed to get help from external sources to deal with the natural hazard that was there. Um, Disaster risk management deals with risk reduction policies and strategies. So what this means is that it deals with you know, making certain decisions that can help to improve the lives of persons and at the same time reduce the exposure of those persons to a hazard. Okay, so let's use the Hellshire example again. So say for example you had persons who were actually living along the beach in Hellshire, then disaster risk management would mean putting things in place to ask those persons to relocate to say higher ground, especially if there is a storm or hurricane that is coming. All right. Um, Climate change now is what a lot of persons call an existential crisis, because since the late 1900s, all right, so we are in 2021 now, 2021, and we are in the 21st century. Prior to the 21st century was the 20th century, you know, that spanned the 1900s, all right? Since the turn of the 1900s, there has been a considerable increase in the uh, greenhouse gas. You know, carbon dioxide is a gas that is one greenhouse gas, and it causes the atmosphere to increase in temperature. So the earth is getting hot, right? As a result of the earth getting hot, it causes several problems. To the top left, you can see some polar bears. Yeah, there's a mother bear and there's a baby bear, and they are on a piece of ice. And this is because the Arctic, you know, the Arctic region that is close to the North Pole, it is melting. So this area is normally very cold and has a lot of ice. It it is melting because the earth is warming. All right. And you know, this picture shows the earth with you know, the earth being sick. You know, there are fires, there are fossil fuels being burnt, and this is also contributing to the greenhouse effect that, you know, is taking place on the earth. No, according to the, you know, someone who is very important, who is a co-chair of IPCC working group. IPCC is an organization that looks at climate change, right? And they're saying that us as human being, we're having a negative impact on the earth. So the role of human influence on climate system is undisputed. So it is 100%, and there's a very high probability that us as human, we're contributing to climate change. We're contributing to the increase in temperature of the earth. Okay, which leads me to the next aspect of the presentation. Since we are you know, impacting the earth in such a way, it is our duty to play a role to combat climate change. And you know, we can play a role based on the careers that we decide on doing. No, for climate change and broadly disaster risk management, being a lecturer is one way to contribute to this. And you know, being a lecturer means that you would be, in essence, teaching people about, you know, what disaster risk management is, what climate change is, what are the impacts of it, and so on. In addition to this, you can be, say, a course developer who develop courses relating to climate change, relating to disaster risk management. But these two areas are just primarily in, you know, in academics. There are a lot of opportunities even outside of academics. Yeah. So for the private and the government, if you're planning to go into the private or the government sector, these are some examples of opportunities that you could do. No, you could be a policy specialist. You could focus on, you know, being an advisor to, say, if you're in Jamaica, you could be an advisor to the Prime Minister about climate change matters. You know, you could be an advisor to the Minister of uh, Agriculture, or another ministry of urban renewal and climate change in Jamaica. So this is one career opportunity. And how do you get there in terms of being a policy specialist? You would need to complete your high school education. Additionally, you need to complete at least your first degree. And your first degree could be in even geography, since it is so multidisciplinary. I pulled out some specific examples of jobs that are offered that are in the disaster risk management area. And that would include monitoring and evaluation officer. All right. So because of climate change, there are a lot of projects going on, and you need persons to ensure that these projects are doing what they're supposed to do. So you need persons to monitor, and you need persons to evaluate the progress of these projects. All right. In addition, you could be an urban planner. Okay. And in several cases, a geographer could become an urban planner, because urban planning is a core aspect of geography. Because remember, I said geography deals with people and place. So an urban planner would be someone who plans, you know, the setup of an urban region. So say, for example, a a country plans to have a new city or expand an existing city. For example, in Kingston, recently there has been a move to renovate and improve the downtown area. So you need a urban planner to help, in this process. This is important. Why? Can anyone tell me one reason? Well, two persons. I want two persons to tell me one reason each of why an urban planner would be important for disaster risk management and or climate change.
Well, I guess this urban planner would be important for disaster risk management, so they could choose a place which is least likely to have impending disasters, and if there is a disaster, that place will not receive any serious damage.
Okay, very good. Very good. I'll comment on that shortly. One more person tell me why it would be important, for an urban plan, and how is this linked to disaster risk management or climate change? Anyone else? No? All right, that's fine. But very good observation there. In order to mitigate, in order to reduce the impact of, say, a storm or a hurricane or a tsunami, or an earthquake, you need structures, physical structures in place that can help with this. With climate change, as I mentioned earlier, the melting of ice in the Arctic region and other regions that would primarily have a lot of ice stored will and is leading to an increase in the sea level. Okay, so there has been sea level rise, and if cities, especially those that are on the coast, for example, Kingston, and several other cities right across the Caribbean that are on the coast, then if there aren't proper plans put in place for these urban areas, then whenever you have one of those events taking place, it can lead to a disaster happening. You know, people can lose their lives, right? Um, and property. So it is important that these persons play an active role to mitigate, to reduce, you know, the impact of this happening. To be an urban planner, you would need a first degree. You can get a first degree in urban planning. You can also get a degree in geography, because a core aspect of geography deals with urban planning. And then you could be able to work um, at the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management. That if you're in Jamaica, you could work at, if you're, you know, in other areas of the Caribbean, you could be a part of SEDIMA, you know, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, which is in essence a Caribbean-wide disaster management institution that helps to manage, mitigate, and respond to disasters right across the Caribbean. All right. However, you can also do humanitarian work. You could be a consultant, you know, an education consultant that deals with, you know, increasing awareness of disaster risk and how to deal with disasters. Um, Communication consultant, a research consultant. These, especially for humanitarian work, it often requires more than a first degree. So oftentimes you'd be required to have at least a master's degree in the area or in a similar discipline. Okay, either a master's degree or a PhD. Okay. Um, Furthermore, you could be a human rights officer, and this is also related to um, disaster risk management or um, climate change, because in recent times there has been a significant increase in the amount of money that is directed to combating climate change. Okay, so these international organizations, such as the United Nations or the World Bank, they are pumping a lot of money into mitigating against climate change and adapting to climate change. All right. So as a result of this, there is a growing demand for, you know, humanitarian jobs right across the world. This is not limited only to Jamaica. You know, you can do this. Oftentimes, some of these jobs, they are international. You might be placed in New York. You know, you might be placed in Brussels. You know, you might be placed in Frankfurt, Germany. You know, it varies, but these are all jobs that deals with disaster risk management and climate change. Okay, and for these jobs, you would need an advanced degree. So getting a first degree, if you're in Jamaica, You could get a degree at the University of the West Indies. You could get a degree at University of Technology. You could get a first degree at you know, the University College of the Commonwealth. So there are many options where you could get your first degree, but it takes time, and you have to ensure that as you move, through high school, through the primary level, you are, doing primary, particularly the sciences for some of these jobs. But I want to say something to you. Um, you can do other careers that are linked to those fields. You can become an entrepreneur. You could come up with something innovative. For example, since carbon dioxide is a problem, you could invent a device that captures carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, you know, and that also is linked to disaster risk management and climate change. So the scope of career opportunities is not limited, because I mentioned a while ago that you need to do sciences, but since the field is so, the scale of it is so massive, um, you you could be a lawyer that deals with climate change matters. You could be an environmental. You could do environmental law. You could be an engineer that deals with climate change matters. You can be a civil engineer that helped to design buildings that whenever an earthquake passes, those buildings they sway, they don't crumble. And we are in an earthquake prone region, as recently we saw there was an earthquake in Haiti, that did severe damage. Um, in addition to that, you could go into finance. You could be an actuary, right? That deals with climate change related matters. So an actuary is, in a sense, a professional that helps to measure and manage risks. And disaster risk management, as the name suggests, and climate change poses risks to persons and persons, property. So you could be an actuary that deals with this. You could be a hedge fund manager. In essence, the world is your playground. And while the field of disaster risk management and climate change has some specific careers that are linked to it directly, there are many other careers that are linked to it indirectly. Uh, so the world is yours for the taking. It is in essence for you to find something that you love, something that you're passionate about, and something that can add value to society. Something, for example, relating to disaster risk management or climate change, because the world is in a crisis. Climate change is a big problem, and it is for us to find uh, ways and solutions to fix the problem. And we can do this through these various career paths. Okay, all right. So these are a few resources that I would have used. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask.
All right. So, thank you for that. So, I have a question. So, what are some of the most common misconceptions about career change? What do you think?
Well, hi, Mr. Scott. How are you? It's Tremaine. I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed your presentation because recently I've been doing a course with Chris, and one of the things that I didn't realize is that I have a passion for disaster risk management, and they've been showing how my research is focused on fisheries, but I know they have a program that they're trying to develop in which they assist with these disaster risk management, especially after hurricanes, etc. And they put in things in place for fisher folk. And I kind of split my passion because I have a passion for fisheries as well as a passion for people. So as you talk about disaster risk management and climate change overall is so interdisciplinary. So even if you go into any other field, there is still work to be done in terms of disaster risk management. So I really like that you touched on that. And especially as I realize now that I think I want to push more into disaster risk management despite having my degree in fisheries. And I think I want to try to bridge the gap. Well, there isn't really much of a gap, but there's more work to be done within that gap, I should say.
Yeah, that is awesome. Absolutely, absolutely. It is so multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary. So it's very cross-cutting. So looking at some of uh, the traditional careers in disaster risk management and climate change is good. But we had to highlight that you could be in finance and still be doing work related to disaster risk management and and climate change. And fisheries, I think fisheries is core. You know, uh, the blue economy and the role that fishers and fisher folks play and their vulnerability. I mean, there's no gap at all there, as you said.
Yes, I agree 100%. Thank you.